Well, it's been more than 2 weeks now since the toxic train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, and residents are still reporting health issues from it. People in the area are complaining of rashes, nausea, and trouble breathing. The problem's gotten so bad that the state has now opened up a health clinic in the area to treat people who suspect that they may have been poisoned. Federal officials from the Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of Health are arriving in the town this week to monitor the situation. Residents have been assured that their drinking water is safe. However, the only testing on the water that's been released was conducted by Norfolk Southern, the company that's responsible for all of this mess and obviously has an incentive to downplay the damage. And there's reason to doubt the conclusions of those tests. As the Huffington Post revealed, quote, the lab report on the railroad funded sampling indicates the samples were not handled in accordance with federal Environmental Protection Agency standards. A separate analysis of groundwater conducted by the Columbiana County Health District has yet to be released. But don't worry, guys. Pete's got this. All right? Over the weekend, the transportation secretary sent a letter to the CEO of Norfolk Southern urging him to do the right thing when it comes to supporting the people of East Palestine in future efforts to improve rail safety. Reading from the stern but only moderately so letter, quote, I'm writing to emphasize the urgent need for Norfolk Southern to demonstrate unequivocal support for the people of East Palestine and the surrounding areas and to be part of needed safety improvements across the industry. Damn, Pete hitting him with that emphasize the urgent need stuff. He's really taking the gloves off. He added later that soon he'll be laying out several steps that Norfolk Southern and all major railroads should take immediately to improve rail safety for workers and communities. Well, let's hope this works. Let's hope rail CEOs suppress their profit making impulses because a politician requested it. By the way, here's Buttigieg meeting with Norfolk Southern CEO Alan Shaw about 10 weeks before the East Palestine disaster. According to Shaw's LinkedIn account, they discussed, quote, shared goals. In addition to the sternly worded letter, only moderately sternly worded letter, the Department of Transportation will reportedly unveil new measures as soon as today to make the rail system safer. That will include rulemaking to require upgraded brakes on all trains with high hazard flammable compounds, and a rule to mandate at least two-person crews on trains, and also a call to Congress to pass new laws to increase fines on railroad operators that violate safety regulations and strengthen existing rules on trains carrying volatile substances, plus speeding up the phasing in of new, safer tank cars. No doubt these measures could reduce the 1,000 or so train derailments that take place in the U.S. every year, but the best solution is still just to nationalize the industry. Next up, the state of Illinois is set to pass the most expansive paid leave policy for workers in the country. The U.S. is one of the only developed nations in the world that doesn't force employers to provide paid sick days to workers, and even a highly contagious pandemic hasn't spurred federal lawmakers into action. But at the state level, there is movement. 14 states and Washington, D.C. have paid sick leave policies on the books, allowing workers to take a certain number of days off if they have a documented health issue. Illinois' proposal goes even further and provides workers with paid leave for any reason they no longer need a health justification. It's similar to laws in Maine and Nevada, where workers can choose how to use their paid time off. However, in those states, those regulations apply to only larger businesses. Smaller ones are exempt, but in Illinois, the policy would cover nearly all workers. The bill was passed by the state House and Senate last month. Governor J.B. Pritzker is now poised to sign it into law, after which it will take effect on January 1st, 2024, and from then on, workers will accrue 1 hour of paid leave for every 40 hours they work. Lobbying groups, though, are preparing to fight it, including the National Federation of Independent Businesses, which has a tendency to sue to the Supreme Court to block legislation that helps workers. Meanwhile, across the ocean in the UK, there's a shift toward a 4-day work week taking place. Last year, 61 firms covering nearly 3,000 employees agreed to experiment with a 4-day work week for a few months. And the results are in. Workers dig it, and so too do employers. The experiment, which was sponsored by a New Zealand advocacy group called 4-Day Week Global, ran from June to December 2022. And of the 61 companies that participated, nearly all have continued the policy. Only 3 have paused it. 71% of workers reported less burnout, 39% reported less stress, and 40% reported a reduction in sleeping difficulties, all thanks to working only 4 days a week. Bloomberg reported, quote, the time men spent looking after children increased by more than double that of women during the trial. None of the 2,900 participants said they want to ditch the 4-day arrangement, and 15% even said that no amount of extra money could make them return to 5 days. Employers reported that their revenue went up during the experiment, so too did worker productivity, and fewer workers were absent each month. In addition to all that, families reported savings on childcare costs now that they were able to spend an extra day at home with their kids. And finally, over the weekend, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. won the Daytona 500. I don't know if we have any NASCAR heads in the audience. I was born in Daytona, so it's sort of in my DNA to at least pay attention to this stuff. And one thing I noticed right off the bat is the main sponsorship on Ricky's car. Yep, he's driving the Kroger car. So I guess we know where all those millions in stolen wages went. For Kroger workers, this is like someone you suspect is robbing from you, and then you see them suddenly driving around in a flashy, expensive car. The United Food and Commercial Workers Union has filed a number of lawsuits against Kroger on behalf of thousands of workers who allege that the company's new payroll system ended up shorting them. Some workers didn't receive a paycheck at all. Others didn't receive their full overtime pay. Also, reports of improper deductions on their paycheck. The company has not remedied the situation, and workers have been hit with penalties for late rent and utility payments as they wait for Kroger to pay them what they're owed. Some have been forced to take out predatory loans just to make ends meet. And these are workers, by the way, who are already paid poverty wages at the store. Last week, a trio of senators demanded the grocer answer questions about the wage theft allegations and also about the store's multi-billion-dollar proposed merger with Albertsons that will further consolidate the industry and harm workers and shoppers. Senators Warren, Sanders, and Wyden wrote, quote, given our concerns regarding your company's treatment of workers and your proposed merger that would further adversely impact them, we request a full accounting of how this widespread wage theft occurred and what steps you plan to take to compensate your workers prior to any merger with Albertsons. The senators should update their letter after the weekend's events and ask the grocer how much in stolen wages went toward the NASCAR sponsorship.